Good evening, Elton. Good evening, Billy.
Is it possible to hear too many classic songs in a single evening? There's one way to find out. The Billy Joel Elton John tour this summer, and see how two of popular music's most indestructible superstars go about cramming their parallel quarter centuries of hits into the space between Curtain Up and final encores. Let's face it, these two could fill an entire Woodstock festival with their combined back catalogs and still have enough left over for an after-hours set in some nearby roadhouse. The John-Joel double act was originally Joel's idea, even though he once complained to Rolling Stone that people compared me to Elton John when I was copying McCartney. Visitors to the informal A Conversation with Billy Joel sessions he has hosted in England and the USA will have been treated to his cheekily accurate impersonation of Elton. In fact, it's only remarkable that neither of them had thought of teaming up before. Their backgrounds don't sound too similar. Joel speaks in the pugnacious tones of his native Hicksville, Long Island, where he broke his nose learning to box, while John came from a sleepy little town near London and was almost lured into a career in classical music. But they have always had much in common. Billy and I go a long way back, explains Elton. We're both big fans of each other's music. He's such a great piano player. You don't turn down the opportunity to play with another great piano player. There's a little more to it than that. Both men have become renowned for musical craftsmanship, which has proved itself more than a match for the technology-based one-hit wonders who float in and out of the charts. Both continue to carry the flat for this century's tradition of intelligent, eclectic popular music, which runs back through Bob Dylan and the Beatles, via Chuck Berry and Elvis Presley, to an earlier generation of great songwriters like Cole Porter or George Gershwin. Mention of either of their names conjures up visions of a stocky, energetic figure pounding at a piano and emptying both lungs into the microphone at full force. Both, in their different ways, have enjoyed more than their fair share of public notoriety, and each of them understands the value of old-fashioned professional showmanship, even if Billy learned his from Broadway musicals and Tin Pan Alley, while Elton seems to have borrowed glam rock, Liberace, and London's long-vanished music halls. This summer finds several leading lights from previous rock and roll decades pulling themselves belatedly back together after long years apart. But John and Joel have never been away, and have kept on keeping on. They've never lost sight of the fact that music is what they do for a living, and always will be. It's something their fans instinctively understand and appreciate. I like to play, Joel explained. It goes back to before I was a recording artist, or any of this rock star crap. As the Grateful Dead so perceptively put it, it's been a long, strange trip. Before he became Elton Hercules John, a name he legally adopted in 1972, Elton was Reginald Dwight, born the son of the Royal Air Force squadron leader and dance band trumpeter Stanley Dwight in Pinner on March 25, 1947. Post-war life in Britain was drab and gray and gave no warning of the psychedelic music eruption which would burst over the 60s and 70s. Young Reg displayed enough aptitude on the piano to win a scholarship to London's prestigious Royal College of Music when he was only 11, but luckily for future generations of rock and CD buyers, it was Little Richard and Jerry Lee Lewis, not Mozart and Beethoven, who really fired his imagination and appealed to his sense of flamboyant exhibitionism. Before long, Dwight Jr. was to be found slipping out furtively on local pubs, learning some early stagecraft by banging out drinking songs and country western classics on out-of-tune, beer-soaked pianos and earning himself a pocket full of loose change. A few more pieces had to fall into place before the man the world would come to know as Elton John was ready to launch his major assault on superstardom. He put in a stint with the band called Bluesology and briefly held a menial job at music publishers, but the turning point was an introduction to a young lyric writer, Bernie Taupin, in 1967. Legend has it that the pair began writing songs by letter and had 20 completed numbers in the bag before they ever met face to face. Bernie and Elton were signed up as in-house songwriters at Dick James Music, and their partnership worked well enough for their songs to be covered by Three Dog Night, Roger Cook, and Lulu. But Elton wanted success in his own right, and with his 1970 album Elton John, he began to get his wish. The album contained Your Song, the first John Taupin classic, and the start of a long line of peerless heartstring tuggers that would stretch down the years, like Candle in the Wind, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Daniel, or Sad Songs. A legendary appearance at the Troubadour Club in Los Angeles triggered critical hysteria and non-stop radio airplay. Elton's flying circus was off the ground, and even he couldn't have dreamed how high it would fly. Across the Atlantic, in the big brash country where Elton John would soon be splashing about gleefully in the megastardom being heaped upon him in unimaginable quantities, William Martin Joel was born on May 9th, 1949. For Joel, his future was always going to be centered around music, but when he saw the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show, the balance tipped decisively towards rock and roll. He'd begun taking piano lessons at the precocious age of 4, and his training left him more than qualified for the string of fledgling bands with whom he cut his performing teeth. The Echoes, the Lost Souls, the Hassles, Attila. He dabbled in session work, including playing on a TV commercial featuring Chubby Checker plugging pretzels, and even briefly tried his hand as a rock critic on a magazine called Changes. Then he embarked on a solo career, and by 1972, Joel found himself earning a living by playing piano in the lounge of the Executive Room in Los Angeles, an experience he later reflected upon in his song Piano Man. But it was to this very piano bar that Columbia Records chief Clive Davis came to hear Joel perform, and he liked what he heard enough to sign him up to the label. Early discs like Piano Man and Street Life Serenade made respectable showings in the album charts and earmarked an earthy Long Islander as an artist packing plenty of promise, though it wasn't until The Stranger in 1977 that Joel really began to reveal the depth and range of his talent. Boosted by landmark hit singles like Just the Way You Are and She's Always a Woman, sales of The Stranger rivaled those of Simon & Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water, which at that point was Columbia's all-time bestseller. It was the shape of things to come. As Elton John charged riotously through the 70s, racking up a string of enormous hit albums like Don't Shoot Me, I'm Only the Piano Player, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy, and Blue Moves, he seemed to have everything, and possibly more. His songwriting was widely admired, he moved easily among the rock elite and could number the likes of Eric Clapton, John Lennon, David Bowie, Mick Jagger, Cliff Richard, and Tina Turner among his friends, and he had also become the last word in rock and roll showmanship. At an Elton John show, nothing was too camp, extravagant, or outrageous. He appeared in sparkly top hats festooned with peacock feathers. He wore baseball outfits studded with rhinestones. He tried hot pants and leotards. He teetered atop ridiculous stack heels and draped himself in an assorted variety of fruit. He looked like Dame Edna, average multiplied 1,000,000 times. Maybe it was all because his disciplinarian father had banned him from wearing hush-puppy suede shoes in his youth. In my 20s, I'm living out all the things I was never allowed to do in my teenage years, he explained. Yet his fans from those days would never have believed the changes they would see Elton go through, from Captain Spectacular to today's sober super ambassador of rock. If the first half of the 80s found Elton apparently settling into a calmer phase of his career, boosted by Too Low for Zero and its 4 international hit singles, the end of the decade was like some kind of ghastly public ordeal for him. He survived a throat cancer scare while on tour in Australia, his marriage fell apart, and he was a victim of a smear campaign in the British tabloid press. But Elton not only survived, but grew and prospered, as if his audience loved him more when they saw the problems he had been forced to confront. Sleeping with the Past became his best-selling album for years, while the To Be Continued retrospective compilation was a timely reminder of the quantity of excellent work he had produced over the course of his career. The new 90s Elton seemed to have his head screwed on and his feet back up on the ground. His larger-than-life personality had led him to indulge in some equally outsized addictive habits, but Elton decided it was time to get a grip and turn over a new leaf. "I've finally resolved every one of my problems that I had," he declared proudly. He has been able to look outside himself at the wider world, too. Not that Elton has suddenly jumped onto the fashionable bandwagon of good and charitable causes. Friends, colleagues, and employees will all testify to his generosity. While he was playing fundraising shows for invalid children and for his favorite Waterford football club 20 years ago. But he was greatly moved by the death in 1990 of teenage hemophiliac AIDS victim Ryan White, with whom he'd established a close friendship. Determined to wage war on the AIDS virus, he announced that he would donate royalties from his singles to AIDS charities, and he established the Elton John AIDS Foundation, for which the annual Oscar night party has already become a fixture in Beverly Hills. Billy Joel has never enjoyed quite the same kind of sensational public profile as Elton, but he has found himself taking a different kind of ride through some of the most awkward obstacles the music industry has to offer. While his music has continued to enjoy an unparalleled, unbroken run of success, with albums like An Innocent Man, The Bridge, or Stormfront generating all-time classic singles as Uptown Girl or We Didn't Start the Fire, Joel himself had to grapple with the business side of the music business. The details have been reported at length elsewhere, but suffice it to say that right after Joel turned 40 and ought by rights to have been enjoying a sensation of well-earned security and the luxury of looking back contentedly over his achievements, he found himself embroiled in not just one, but 2 massive lawsuits. Suddenly, it seemed as if everything he'd accomplished was hanging precariously in the balance. Joel responded to the challenge with characteristic bluntness and honesty. "I've made a lot of mistakes," he admitted. "I've made some amazing major screw-ups, but here I am, alive to tell the tale, so I must have done something right." Actually, the music biz mega lawsuit has become a kind of rite of passage for some of the biggest artists of all time, so at least Joel is in distinguished company. It happened to Bruce Springsteen, David Bowie, the Beatles, and the Stones, and to Elton John, too. George Michael is still working his way through the endless labyrinths of the law. The experience has left Joel bruised and battered, but able to dispense hard-won wisdom. "That would be my advice," he said. "Get an attorney, but as soon as you can, get another one to watch over him." As if all this wasn't difficult enough, Billy has also had to endure the breakup of his marriage to Christy Brinkley, whom he first wooed by singing to her from the piano in a hotel lounge on the exquisite Caribbean island of St. Bartholomew. As usual, Joel has taken it on the chin, and has made a point of reassuring his concert audience that he's coping okay. Like he sings in My Life, "I don't need you to worry for me, 'cause I'm all right." He just doesn't feel too inclined to play Uptown Girl anymore, that's all. Of course, it's part of the process of being a long-established star that real life seeps into their music and their performances. Real experiences, whether they're love or hate, profit or loss, are the lifeblood of any songwriter's art, and they form the roots of their relationship with their listeners. Maybe the most important characteristic that Elton and Billy share, apart from their enduring gift for writing great songs, is their capacity to face up to their problems and then to communicate what they've learned to their audiences with honesty, straightforwardness, and killer choruses. It says much about both performers that overcoming life's little difficulties only seems to make them stronger. Lately, Elton has been working at fever pitch with the late '93 album Duets, pairing him with luminaries like Katie Lang, Bonnie Raitt, Don Henley, as well as longtime friend Kiki Dee, with whom he recorded Don't Go Breaking My Heart in 1976. His recent collaboration with lyricist Tim Rice on the soundtrack for the animated Walt Disney picture The Lion King produced the hit single Can You Feel the Love Tonight? There's a new Elton John album in the pipeline. For Billy Joel, the upper reaches of the charts continue to be as familiar to him as that boxer's nose on his face. His 1993 album, River of Dreams, roared straight into the #1 slot on the American charts, and the title track instantly took its rightful place among Joel's gallery of precision-tooled pop timepieces. Again, it was the force of personal experience that gave the music its compelling power. It's the story of a person that's in a crisis, is how Joel described River of Dreams. It's obvious in the first couple of songs that it's a pretty angry person. But artistry had come to the rescue, shaping music and emotion into a convincing whole. My music is a synthesis of all the music that I like, Billy argues. I don't know if I'm essentially a rock and roll artist. I've always believed that the beauty of American music was its ability to transcend and cross lines. Crossing lines and breaking down frontiers is what John and Joel are all about. They've done it for longer and done it better than almost anybody else you can name. Make the most of these face-to-face shows because there probably won't be anything else like them this side of the year 2000.
Saturday, the regular crowd shuffles in. There's an old man sitting next to me, making love to his tonic and gin. I join at the bar, he's a friend of mine. He gets me my drinks for free. I just drink with a jug. I'll light up the smoke. There's some place that he'd rather be. He says, Bill, I believe this is killing me. That's the smile ran away from his face. Well, I'm sure that I could be a movie star. I could get out of this place. La-di-da, la-la-di-da, la-la. Now Paul is a real estate novelist who never took time for a wife, and he's talking with David, who's still in the Navy, but probably will be for life. Saturday, the manager gives me a smile.